Hey y'all, it's Dawn, and I'm so glad you're back. I've got another fun, budget-friendly DIY video for you today. This is another collab, and I'll tell you more about it in a minute. Now for the first DIY. I got this rusty, crusty, yucky chandelier at a flea market a while back. I wanted to redo it, but I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. To start, I went ahead and removed all the old bulb holders and the wires that I could get to. After I removed the bulb part, I used a pair of pliers to bend down the metal pieces that were in the middle. I hope that makes sense. I tried bending them back and forth to get them to break, but that just didn't work. After I got all the pieces removed, it was time to try to clean some of the dust and dirt off. I placed the chandelier in a bucket and used the pressure washer on it. And yes, I worked on this project with the assistance of my granddog, Lily. She loves Grandma and follows Grandma everywhere. But I think she loves the pressure washer more. I used a pair of needle nose pliers to remove the top chain off because I knew I wasn't going to be screwing it into the ceiling. This took some work, but I eventually got it twisted enough so I could remove it. I dried as much of the water off of the chandelier as I could with a shop towel, and then set it in the sun to dry. While the chandelier was drying, I strung a rope at the corner of our fence to paint the chandelier. I used Rust-Oleum flat white spray paint and sprayed it until it was completely covered. I used some Dollar Tree plastic craft jars to cover the lights. I painted them with Rust-Oleum frosted glass, and I love the way they turned out. I used some Dollar Tree ribbon around the top of the jars to cover up where the cap screwed on. And I simply just hot glued the ribbon to the jar. And I'm going to use these Dollar Tree battery operated candles as the lights for the chandelier. Once I figure out where I'm going to hang the chandelier, I may go back and put some solar lights in, but for now, this is what I used. And this is what the chandelier looks like now. Big improvement. I just love the way it turned out. Let me know in the comments if you would leave these battery operated lights or would you go with solar powered lights. I am so excited to be in this collaboration with the talented Sandra from the Schwowin's Nest. We came together for this thrift store makeover for all of our subscribers. I will have a link to Sandra's channel and also to her video in the description. Be sure to check her out. She is very talented and has some awesome DIYs on her channel. Now back to my makeovers. DIY number 2. I picked up this cute little bucket at Goodwill recently. I know some of you are going to be a little shocked with what I do, but I needed a bucket for my new side table in the living room, and the pineapples just wouldn't work. The first thing I did was paint the entire outside of the bucket with Waverly Ink black chalk paint. I then put various colors of paint on a plate. The paints I used were Folk Art Metallic in Gunmetal Gray and also in Pearl White, and Folk Art Brushed Metal in Brushed Silver. I used a Dollar Tree sponge to apply the paint to the bucket. I started with the darkest color first, the Gunmetal Gray. I dabbed the Gunmetal Gray paint onto the bucket. Without cleaning the sponge, I dipped it into the second color, the Brushed Silver, and dabbed it around the bucket. I continued working with these two darker colors until I was happy with the look so far. I used my heat gun and dried the bucket at this point. Using a new sponge, I started dabbing more of the brushed silver onto the bucket. I started again with a clean sponge and began dabbing the pearl white on. I then went back in with the gunmetal gray color. And again with the brushed silver. This is definitely a layering process. And again with the pearl white. I did the same process on the other side of the bucket. After finishing both the front and the back, this is what the bucket looked like. I decided to go ahead and do the same process to the inside of the bucket so that it matched. I used a small paintbrush and applied some of the paint around the edge where my sponge wouldn't reach. After finishing both the inside and outside of the bucket, I sealed it with matte Mod Podge to protect it. I found this cut file at Design Bundles, sized it in Design Space, and applied it to the front of the bucket. I used my Mod Podge roller to make sure the vinyl was stuck well, and then removed the transfer tape. I absolutely love how this pineapple bucket turned into something so sweet for my living room. And who would have ever guessed it was covered in pineapples? I have to know who let out the loudest gasp when I painted over the pineapples. Let me know in the comments if you would have covered them up. DIY number 3. I picked up several of these shutters off of a Facebook Marketplace post. I have already used one, and I will link that video at the top and in the description. I cut this one in half using a table saw. I'll tell you, this thing scares me, and I really don't like using it. But when the hubby is working, you do what you gotta do. I used some paint and varnish stripper to remove as much of the old paint as I could. I figured this would be easier than trying to sand the shutters. I used an old paintbrush and painted the stripper on the shutter. I put a pretty thick coat on and waited to see it start bubbling up. It took about 20 or 30 minutes for it to start bubbling. I did this on both sides of the shutter. I removed the bubbled up paint using a scraper. And here is another one of those do as I say, not as I do moments. It's highly recommended to use gloves while doing this. If this stuff gets on your skin, it is going to burn. That is why I'm being so careful not to touch any of the stripper. And then sprayed both sides off using a pressure washer. And guys, look who came to visit Grandma for the week. Lily, my grand dog, has been following me around all week. She loves her grandma and is such a good girl. This also helped to remove more of the paint. I sat the shutter in the sun to dry. The next day, I used some leftover paint I had and painted the first half of the shutter. The paint is a light gray color and I really like it. I painted the front and the back of the shutter because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with it quite yet. I cut down several 1x4s and sanded them with my orbital sander. These 1x4s actually came from an old bed frame that I tore apart a while back. I saved the springs and the wood from the bed because I knew they would come in handy. Once I was finished sanding, I used some ebony stain I have had for a while and stained all the 1x4s. Okay, so here's where my plan kind of changed. I was originally going to make a storage cart with wheels for my craft room, but the plywood I had on hand was warped and it just wasn't in good enough condition. I'll just have to come up with another way to make the storage cart because I really need one. Instead, I decided to go with some shutter wall decor. With the first half of the shutter, I used my drill and screw gun to attach 3 of the 1x4s to the shelves. And I also placed 2 hooks at the bottom so things could be hung from it. If you like farmhouse decor and DIYs, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now. And if you hit the bell notification, YouTube will notify you when I upload a new video. And here's just a quick look at how the shutter turned out. With the other half of the shutter, I placed a matching hook at the top so I could hang a wreath from it and a shelf at the bottom. I stained the sides of the shelves and placed hooks on the back of both shutters so they could be hung. Even though I wasn't able to make the cart I wanted, I do love how these shutter wall pieces turned out. Let me know in the comments what you think. Sandra is so talented and has a heart of gold. Be sure to check out some of the amazing DIYs she has on her channel. Thank you to all my loyal subscribers and viewers. And if you found me through Sandra, welcome. And I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see y'all next time. Happy crafting!